I don't want to go to college. Bet I've said as much 100 times since December, and I know they aren't the words my parents hope to hear conclude 14 years of private school education, but they're true. I don't want to go. While many of my classmates happily anticipate college, I think they'd agree that we're not exactly running from the same boredom that plagues your average high schooler. In essence, Episcopal seniors have a pretty good setup, especially compared to what awaits us in college. I have my own room, my own bed, my own car. In truth, the only thing that doesn't seem like my own is the money my friends and I eat lunch with every day. But apart from having and doing things that I won't be able to afford for another quarter century, I get to play sports that I love for coaches that I love, and consistently interact with teachers and friends, both of whom I love. Things really couldn't be better, so why on earth should we, the class of 2011, want to leave Episcopal? The answer is something I don't have. You might say to grow as people, to expand your opportunities and your understandings, and so on. And while all that makes sense, I've never actually thought or felt a word of it. So, instead of a thoughtful answer, what I have for you is more whining, or really thanking and maybe some reminiscing. I'm not sure that it's good form to flash back to a Catholic confessional and an Episcopal graduation, but in the interest of making a point, I'll step out on a limb. A few years ago, on a Saturday afternoon, I sat across from my 80-year-old Irish priest, Monsignor Danaher, and I conjured up every horrible thing I'd done. And I spilled them all out, and I waited for Monsignor's judgment, so he paused for a moment. And then, instead of dwelling on one of my admissions, or for that matter, throwing me out of the church, he gave me a piece of advice that was totally irrelevant to my confession. Monsignor said, over the next few years, you will treat the people you love the most terribly. You'll hurt them, and you'll hurt them again without knowing it, and that's okay because it's what teenagers do. But try to notice how easily they forgive you and remember it for the rest of your life. When I think about Monsignor's advice, I realize that looking back on the bulk of my teenage years, many thanks are in order. And not just for the forgiveness granted me, but also for the unsolicited love and guidance from those around me. Here's a little bit of what I remember. I remember that after my final high school football game, we said our team prayer, and when I stood up, Coach McGee was standing behind me. All he said was, "Hey, it's been fun." And he gave me a hug. 6 months later, that pulls as many emotional strings as any farewell this weekend will. It's a mistake to interpret Coach McGee's reserved manner as a lack of care for his students. In reality, it's quite the opposite. Coach McGee's relationship with his football players and his history students is one founded on trust and words. That is, I've never heard Coach offer a compliment he didn't mean. He rarely says anything, but when he does, you listen to him. And while Coach McGee serves as a moving reminder to say only what you mean, and that sentimentalism isn't necessary for expressing real love, that isn't the most meaningful thing about him. Coach's most meaningful quality, in my eyes, is his striking resemblance to filmmaker Quentin Tarantino. I mean, it is striking. If you see a man at the reception and you think, who's that enormous version of Quentin Tarantino? You're looking at Coach McGee. But on the opposite pole of the emotional spectrum lies Coach McGee's close friend and fellow history teacher, Mr. Day. Mr. Day is extremely energetic and full of words, but that's not to say he means them any less. Rather, when Mr. Day prays aloud, he leaves these long pauses in between each of his thoughts. Mr. Day pauses not just to perfectly articulate his thoughts, but because he's actually listening. That is, he's listening to what it is he actually feels and actually means. So in effect, one of Mr. Day's lasting impacts on me is the same as Coach McGee's: direction for honestly and fully expressing love. I think Mr. Day was surprised when I first came to him as my go-to advice on high school girls, and talking to them and dealing with them. And frankly, I had my own doubts when I saw pictures of his college haircuts. He had mohawks and flock of seagulls and all kinds of weird stuff. But so far, he hasn't led me astray. Thanks, Mr. Day. One Sunday during football season, I drove to school to pick up some books, and I noticed Coach Hess's truck was there, again. Coach spends 12 hours each day at school, and football practice. We weightlift in the morning, and he does school and football. And he spends roughly 6 hours on Saturday watching film and meeting with coaches, and that's all that's accounted for. I'm sure he works at home. So in addition to 60-hour work week, Coach Hess decided he still had more work to do on a Sunday. Yes, he loves to win, but he also loves his players. His commitment to put our team in the best position to be successful was his expression of love for us. There were sometimes when Coach's competitive nature got the best of him, however. For example, the week we played Foursquare during 9th grade PE class, and Coach Hess refused to surrender to King Square, no matter how many times we got him out. Or even the time Coach Hess denied stepping over the line and wouldn't leave the court during the Springfest dodgeball tournament. Despite Coach Hess's difficulty admitting defeat in certain schoolyard games, his commitment to his job and the people he cares about is what makes his driven, directed nature an overwhelmingly positive example for his players. Mr. Ritter and Ms. Pauley's love for their students invokes a similar quality, a refusal to manipulate their students into being committed and engaged. Mr. Ritter seems like a scary, mean old man. And he is. He's so scary. But he's a scary old man who powerfully cares about his students and wrestlers. This year, Mr. Ritter explicitly told our physics class that we had to try on the AP exam if for no other reason than for his sake. But it wasn't manipulative. In fact, it was totally straightforward and guileless. He knew that a group of unmotivated seniors at the end of their reign had no reason to attempt the exam, so he told us to do it for him. And we did. It was still impossible. Miss Pauley, too, might take you aback at first meeting. She's this fiery little Cuban woman, about whom Mr. Day once said, "I can't tell if she's angry or excited, I just feel like she's yelling at me." But like Mr. Ritter, she refuses to be manipulative. She once told a student who offered to take a test before leaving for a school trip, "Martyrs are for the church, take it when you get back." And that actually stuck with me because I realized Miss Pauley would never guilt trip me for the sake of her own convenience. As for our class, and this is kind of tangential, there are plenty of commencement speech cliches that are true, but I don't think they're important to say. When I think about the nature of our class and the people in it, there's not some profound theme that stands out. I just know that I'll miss them. I'll miss Sarah Weaver's persistent wit. I'll miss Garrett Scantling's boundless bursts of energy, no matter how poorly you may time them. I'll miss hearing the sound of a playful dolphin emanating from the locker bay, and then realizing that it's just a normal day for Sammy Colon. I'll miss watching a seal gray SUV fly past me on the Crosstown Expressway, and knowing by the speed alone that Kevin Stursberg's at the wheel. I'll miss Forrest Lemaster's unpredictable depth in class discussions and wry humor afterwards. And I'll even miss Caroline and Gwenna screaming at me for shirking my yearbook responsibilities. But I want to close with this recurring, irrational thought I have whenever I really comprehend leaving. I get this strong, passing desire to tell my teachers I was wrong about everything, as if I could stay here if I did. I have this foresight I can't totally grasp that tells me the way that they live is the right way, and the things that they've told me to do are the right things. And though I realize that it's necessary to come into much of this understanding on my own in order to fully believe it, and although I realize that becoming more independent will lead me towards all of this understanding, part of me wishes I could skip the journey. Part of me wishes I could just stay at Episcopal and admit I was wrong to ever question any of it. So as I lay out on paper all of these lasting impressions left by my teachers and coaches, I recognize that the common vein among them is powerful, honest expression of love. I can't help but couple this with Monsignor Danaher's warning at the onset of mine and my classmates' tumultuous teenage years, that I would hurt those who loved me and not love them reciprocally, but that they would love me still. Monsignor's words echo in the lessons of my teachers, because they've loved us all despite our general inability to reciprocate. And all of these selfless interactions have bettered my understanding and expression of love. So my teacher's real gift in expressing this unconditional love, in order that I might understand it and live it out, is to help continue a cycle. According to Monsignor Danaher, once I can fully express and know this powerful, unqualified love, I can be certain that my teenage children or students will abuse it. And if I can't stay here, I have to move on. And the best note I can leave on is a promise from myself and from my classmates to perpetuate the cycle of loving our teenage children or students who don't yet know how to love us back or thank us for an amazing childhood and an amazing education. Thank you.